Good morning, and thank you for joining us here today for Higher Calling. I realize that we're now more than a year into Zoom and Teams platforms, but I want to address a few housekeeping matters before we get started. Over the next 90 minutes, you will hear thought-provoking discussion from our several panelists. You'll be able to ask questions via the Q&A, the question and answer icon there at the bottom of your screen. You will also be able to make comments within the chat function. And for those who might be deaf or hard of hearing, we have closed captioning available. You can also see that at the bottom of your screen, and you can activate that as well. Today, as we prepare to reopen our economy and reopen our local region and plan for a post-pandemic environment, we realize that now more than ever, we have to leverage every single resource available to us. There have been more than 350,000 jobs lost in this region, jobs that may never come back. And so we have to create new ways to get people access to resources so that they can find gainful employment. Now more than ever, it is imperative that we leverage every aspect of human capital available to us in this community. My name is Karen Norrington Reeves, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership. Today, we are discussing second chance hiring. We will be meeting with CEOs who have recognized the business case and the business imperative in hiring individuals who might have been formerly incarcerated or have what we call criminal backgrounds. In addition to that, we'll be meeting with individuals who are formerly incarcerated and talk about their journey to self-sufficiency and to really being thriving members of their communities and participating in our region's economic opportunities. As many as 75 million Americans have a criminal record. 19 million have felony convictions. Roughly 600,000 Americans are released from incarceration every year. And here in Illinois, of the nearly 20,000 people who are released on an annual basis, 60% return to just 15 communities within Cook County and 12 zip codes in the city of Chicago. That is staggering. This means that thousands of men and women are returning home every year. But to what? We have numerous programs, numerous agencies who are doing their level best to provide services on the ground. But these services are not often aligned, they're not often integrated. And so over the past several years, we at the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership, in collaboration with the Cook County Justice Advisory Council, have been working to create a coordinated reentry system here within Cook County. Recently, those efforts have spawned a reentry council with the city of Chicago and also a reentry council with the state of Illinois. These are exciting times, but many employers may not know what to do, may not know how to take a chance on a second chance hire. And so today, you will learn tips, you will hear from experts in this area, and you will walk away informed and better able to actually do this work yourselves. And you're not alone. We are here at the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership to serve as a liaison, to serve as a talent pipeline, and to serve as a resource to you as well. The thousands of men and women that I mentioned represent families, they represent communities, they represent human capital, and they represent endless potential. So Higher Calling for us is both a milestone and a beginning. It is the culmination of the work of our Coordinated Reentry Council, which met last year for a total of 8 months and made policy recommendations to the state for systemic change. But it is also the beginning of an initiative that we are embarking on, a 22-month initiative that will focus on serving 150 returning citizens, helping them on their employment journey, helping them to be connected to holistic services and resources, and watching them thrive and be successful as they reintegrate back into community. That initiative is called A Road Home. But Higher Calling is also another beginning. It is about how we create systemic change within this city, within this state, within this country, frankly. How we make sure that no one is left behind, that no human potential is wasted. It's also fitting because this is April, even though it's the culmination of the month, it is National Second Chance Month. And so today we're going to talk about second chances given, second chances taken, second opportunities, and the fact that second chance does not mean second rate. So we have asked here today a number of respected voices in the public and private sectors. And in a moment, you will hear welcome remarks from Cook County Board President Toni Preckwinkle, as well as City of Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot. And we greatly appreciate their continued support of our work. Feel free to make your comments in the chat, and we're going to get started in just a moment. I also want to direct you to our website, shycookworks.org/higher calling, to sign up to continue this conversation after today. And if you're an employer looking for additional resources, you can also log in there and we will make sure to follow up with you after today. So we are going to get started with our program. I am very pleased to introduce our mayor and our Cook County Board President. They will be followed by a fireside chat with our special guest, Jeffrey Korzenik, and our Master of Ceremonies today, Mr. David Snyder of the Economic Club of Chicago. So now remarks from President Preckwinkle and Mayor Lightfoot.
Hello, this is Toni Preckwinkle, President of the Cook County Board of Commissioners. I'm here today to say thank you to the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership for their initiatives working to find career-sustaining employment opportunities for returning individuals. I applaud their work with local employers advocating for the same positions, fair wages, and working conditions as any other individual. These efforts are critical as we leverage the untapped resources and job skills this population brings to the workforce. I look forward to seeing their work in this area for the betterment of Cook County. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mayor Lori Lightfoot, and I'm proud to partner with the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership to bring you a higher calling. That's HIRE. Our city's latest effort to catalyze employer awareness and consideration of hiring the formerly incarcerated. Several individuals and offices have come together to make this reentry initiative successful. And I am thrilled to work alongside them to be part of this important effort to get our returning residents back to work. Thank you and enjoy today's event, and please continue to be safe.
Jeff, it's great to see you here today, and I just would like to start by first congratulating you on the publication of Untapped Talent.
Thank you.
Many might think, hey, just discovered this topic, but we've had the pleasure of knowing one another for several years, and I know the book is actually a culmination of the work and passion you've held for many years on the topic of second chance hiring. Was there a moment? What has driven your interest in this topic? Was there an inflection moment in your life that inspired you to pursue this with such dedication that you have?
Well, it started out purely professionally. Around 2013, 2014, the topic among people like me who study economics and for whom it's part of their work life, the topic was, why are so many people out of the labor force, low labor force participation rates? And I asked why and dug in and came to the conclusion that three social ills, long-term unemployment, the opioid epidemic, the incarceration recidivism cycle, were major drags on U.S. economic growth. And these were not just social issues, but very much economic issues. But there's a second part to the answer. And the second part is goes back to my childhood. My dad was the first in our family to go to college, self-made, never lost touch with his roots. And when I was 10 or 12, I would go with him on what he called running errands. It was really just excuses to visit the old neighborhood. On one of those visits, he introduced me to a friend who owned a junk shop. And after we walked away from a nice conversation, he said, you know, he was in prison. And I asked for what? And my father said, for murder, the crime of passion. And then my dad gave me a lesson that has stuck with me forever. He said, he's done his time.
So you're an experienced business person, you're an economist. Tell me why it's in the best interest of both employers and from a broader economic perspective, why there should be a new commitment to hiring formerly incarcerated men and women into the workforce.
The reality is we're running out of labor in the United States. Labor force growth and the growth of the productivity of your labor force are the pillars of overall economic growth. We've seen declining birth rates in the United States since 1990. This is a global phenomenon, so even immigration doesn't fix this. And we're losing the baby boomers from the workforce. So there's a labor shortage coming. People are already talking about it today. The pandemic has made it worse because we've created mismatches of where jobs are versus where job seekers are. And this is one of the largest untapped pools of talent in the United States. And that is necessary, but not sufficient. What you also need to see is that this is a model that can work for the business. Businesses should be doing second chance hiring because it is profitable for them to do so. But it's got to be done the right way.
So the mission is so important. And I think many on the call agree that this is something that business and society needs to do a better job of implementing. But when the actual rubber meets the road and it comes time for a formerly incarcerated man or woman to apply for a job, and your interactions with companies that are considering that, what do you find is the major objections that employers have when it comes to hiring people with criminal backgrounds?
There are essentially three objections. One is this safety liability concern. The other is, can second chance employees be good employees? And the final one is one of reputation risk. And all of those need to be addressed by a second chance employer, and all of them can be addressed. And we've seen this work.
Right. So I want to kind of dive into that a little bit because, I think we've both experienced in different stages of our lives where very well-intentioned business people have made an effort and tried to hire and have actually gone the step of hiring a formerly incarcerated workforce. And again, the intentions are wonderful, but so many times we see that when the person is actually hired, gets onboarded into the company, starts to work, it doesn't work out. And many people blame the employee for the lack of success starting to work at that company. But isn't there a responsibility by the employer to adjust and adapt to hiring second chance workers?
This is an extraordinarily important point. I refer to that model of many employers giving it a try as the undifferentiated model. They may have the best intentions, but it doesn't seem to work. What's required for this to work is some very intentional action on the part of the employer, and that includes a process for finding out who's ready to work. So typically you partner with nonprofits or sometimes parole and probation officers. There's a whole variety of pipelines. But then to your point, it's really important that employers understand that this population very typically comes with gaps like any employee. But the gaps here are gaps that employers may not be used to. Lack of mentoring, challenges with transportation, housing. And just like any other motivated employee, if you address the gaps, you get a great employee.
So someone who may be on the program today or more broadly, some companies have the resources to do that. Some think it's an overwhelming proposition for them. Tell us a little bit about the actual business person says, hey, this is great. I want to create a trauma-informed workplace. I want to make these adjustments. Where do I start?
Well, I think there are two really productive places to start. One is go visit second chance employers. Go see how it's done. It may not be the exact model for you, depending on size. The other is to contact critical nonprofit partners. Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership is obviously an example of that. I know some of our listeners and viewers today live outside Cook County, but just about every part of the United States has an American Job Center. Like the Chicago Cook Partnership happens to be the largest one in the country, but there are lots of other resources like that.
So that's the pipeline. That's bringing potential employees to your attention. But once the hiring is made and the person shows up for the job the first day, what are the key things that need to be done? Let's drill down on that a little bit more. Day one, week one, month one, and beyond.
Many of the partners you'll meet in the hiring process, the pipeline, can also provide additional services. But I think a sense of flexibility and mentoring from the employer is really critical. Very often employers have found this is a learning process. And I'll give you one quick example. The no-show, no-call, no-job rule that many companies have probably isn't appropriate for a population that may not know they're supposed to call, that may be faced with a car breaking down with a $300 repair. They don't have $300 to fix the car. So all of these are the kind of things that employers need to show some flexibility at first until they look at this.
Let's talk about the process of hiring employees. Many companies, some large companies, have restrictions on hiring people with felonies. Others have regulatory barriers that keep them legally from hiring the formerly incarcerated. From a broader public policy and political perspective, what needs to be done to create a friendlier environment, a more welcoming environment for people that are in the demographic that we're discussing?
First of all, we have way too many barriers, hard legal barriers, some of those restrictions. Those are not just for jobs, but for housing, broadly known as collateral consequences. There are over 40,000 collateral consequences written into law in the United States, licensing restrictions. And we really need to make it easier, reduce those barriers. We need to look at ways employers from any perceived liability, so expungement, more opportunities for expungement, or making it easier for people to get what are broadly known as certificates of rehabilitation. I believe it's a certificate of conduct in Illinois that also help employers see evidence that this is a person who is much more than, and also have some liability protections. Would be among the many things that would be productive.
So obviously, many of the job candidates are coming out of the criminal justice system. What's being done at that level that's preparing men and women who are coming out of prison or jail in order to start that process of reentry?
This has been a huge gap in our incarceration system, but it's getting much better. There tends to be a greater focus on making sure people walk out with a plan, but critically also with justification, things that you need to just move forward in life. There's much more of a focus on training, not just sort of throwaway programming, but programming that can work with the business community to provide real training for real jobs.
Great. I know many of us are looking forward to diving deeper into untapped talent and learning more. I wish we had more time for our discussion today, but I'm going to take a break now, and we're going to be introducing the premiere of a new video called The Road Home. And in the following video, you're going to be hearing from men and women who are actually doing great things in the workforce, from CEOs who've been enlightened enough to hire formerly incarcerated, and then also from someone within the criminal justice system who's been a strong advocate for hiring formerly incarcerated. So without further delay, here's the premiere of A Road Home.
The world is full of good people who make bad choices. Unfortunately for many, those bad choices or set of bad choices led to incarceration and a lifetime of barriers, including those in the workforce.
We know that the Latinx and African American communities are disproportionately impacted by our criminal justice system. And as returning citizens, they face additional challenges.
The unemployment rate for those who've been incarcerated in prisons is 27%. In the first year, it's as high as 50%. This is talent we can't afford to waste.
The Road Home is our effort to reform reentry services within the city of Chicago and Cook County, and most importantly, hopefully, throughout Illinois.
The Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership has always served returning citizens, but the Road Home provided a specific program to meet their needs.
Whereas other services at the city and the state level seek to connect returning residents to job opportunities, this reentry initiative is unique in that it calls on more employers to do their part to help our residents succeed.
When I was locked up, there was no clear pathway. I think there's services that are available right now, but I think they need to be, it just needs a little kick in the butt, is the way you could say it.
I was hired not because of my lived experience, as they call it. There was nothing special about my lived experience. It cost me 29 dreadful years of my life. I'm just humbled at the fact that I can take such a difficult period of time in my life, use it to help make the reentry system in Illinois a better one. And most importantly, to change the lives and the futures of so many men and women for decades to come. Anybody who needs employment in here, call that number, we're gonna get you together.
There's a work ethic that you develop when you're on the inside. And I just think people need to know that when people come home after being incarcerated, that their desire is just like anyone else's, to re-enter the workforce with dignity, to be paid a livable wage, and also to be treated like any other human being.
My job as a reentry navigator is I am going into the jail, I'm going into IDOC, and I'm gonna select these 150 people and be able to sit down and talk to them and understand where it is they're coming from, because I've been through the same thing.
We're gonna walk them from pre-release all the way through to career level employment and secondary education. Whatever it takes, whatever barriers there are to a successful future and a successful life, we are here to remove that.
I remember while I was away, every day I would spend some time thinking and dreaming about what it would like to be released. And certainly being gainfully employed was a major part of that, being able to take care of my family and my responsibilities. If you're an employer and you're seeking specific skills or knowledge from potential candidates, I encourage you to take a seat at the table and share your needs with colleges and universities so programs can be created and instructed to those that are presently incarcerated and seeking an opportunity when they're released.
We actually work with the incarcerated workforce and have complete sort of career pathing for them. We see the human potential in the person, not the crime for which they're locked up for. And unleashing that potential has been amazing. And the ability for them to, when they are released, to get back into society and take, jobs in, basically STEM is amazing. And they are highly capable, smart. Nobody's ever given them a chance.
My name is Pete Leonard. I am the founder and Chief Roast Master of I Have a Bean Coffee. We roast coffee in Wheaton, Illinois. We founded in 2007. Took 2 years to design and build our own coffee roasting system. Started roasting commercially in 2009 with the express purpose of hiring men and women who have been released from prison. Since we founded, we've employed more than 60 post-prison men and women. We produce coffee rated in the top 1% of all the coffee in the world, and we have a great time doing it. So we employ post-prison people, men and women who have been released from prison, who are done with an old life or just really upset with a mistake that they made in their past that ended them up in prison. We recognize that, and in fact, we don't judge people by the errors of their past. Instead, we want to be known for the present evidence of the content of our character. And so that's what we look for when we hire people. In fact, I get asked all the time, is there any category of crime that you won't hire from? No, none. Everybody's story is different. We listen to people, we listen to the individual story and assess where that person is on their journey from a past life to a new life and make a hiring decision based on that.
For years now, we've been running all sorts of programs within the jail to give people job skills. And frankly, talking to the business community and asking them, what would you want me to do? If you had your dream, what skill would you want me to give a detainee? We've done that. And so we've had all sorts of different programs that have been directing at making people more hireable. And in doing that, then we've had many people hired directly coming out of the jail. And the ones that we have stayed in contact with, and that's many of them, the results have been incredibly positive.
Our demographics suggest we're heading to a labor shortage. We need to be able in the business community to ensure that we have the workforce that can help us thrive as individual companies and thrive as an economy. Developing a talent pipeline takes time and investment. There is never a better time to start than today.
You know, we love our children, we love our family, we want to be productive members of society, and when given that opportunity, we can flourish in our communities, we can flourish in our cities, and ultimately our nation.
And I'm thankful to the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership for giving me a second chance, a chance at career level employment.
Welcome, panelists. Thank you for joining us today. I know there have been on-screen introductions for everyone, so I'm not going to, in the interest of time, introduce each speaker, but just going to dive in. The first question is for Ali Svensson. Ali, you're a successful serial entrepreneur. You sold your first company to Starbucks, and you started Mod Pizza, which is now one of the fastest growing pizza restaurant in the United States with 20 Chicagoland locations. But when you started Mod Pizza, you came in with a very intentional hiring program. Could you share a little bit more about that with us and what it means to your business?
Sure, thank you. Can you hear me? Just want to make sure. No? I'm sorry, I want to make sure that my audio is on.
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you. I'm having problems on my end. We were not that clever when we started Mod Pizza in 2008. We just knew that we wanted to do something that mattered. And we knew that we wanted to be a great employer, and we knew we wanted to provide great customer service. And with that approach, what ended up happening was we provided some job opportunities for people with significant barriers by our second location, well over a decade ago. And a couple of the initial hires had, 3-time felon situations. It was quite substantial, their background, but they were incredible individuals, and they very much wanted to build a life for themselves. And we believed in them. So the gift of an opportunity was what Mod provided. And what we saw happen was incredible. The work ethic, the commitment, the way that these individuals fiercely protected our business, the customer service they provided, that it was really quite astounding to us. And when we decided a few years into the business, once we had had a few locations, we had the big question about whether or not we were going to grow and expand. And we did not believe in our heart that the world needed more fast casual pizza concepts, but we absolutely believed in our heart that the world needed more opportunities for incredible people to change their life and positively impact the lives of others. So the platform of using employment to make a positive social impact was something that was pretty organic at the beginning for us.
Thank you so much. We're going to go from Seattle to the other coast, to the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection, Jeff Brown. Jeff, I first saw you, although we would not meet for many years later, when you were a guest of Chicago native Michelle Obama at the State of the Union for some of your work with the nutrition programs. But you started Second Chance Hiring with 5 hires. It has now grown to 500 Second Chance hires. Could you talk a little bit about what that has meant for your business and your relationship with the communities that you serve?
Sure. Good to see you, my friend. We started this out because in a town hall meeting, we do a lot of work in food deserts. That's our expertise, and part of our process is to meet with the community and talk about what their needs are. And in one of those meetings, one of the community members explained or educated me on the problem of mass incarceration. And it's funny, the angle they explained it is they're worried about my long-term viability if none of my customers don't have an opportunity to work. And she suggested that I find a way to solve that problem. And that's when we started with the 5. We hired 5 then. And to our surprise, with a lot of fear, of course, the first 5, our surprise is that they were good. They had some issues or they needed training in some things we didn't realize, and they were very good in other areas, and that was a success. And so we continued to do it with continued very, very good success. And matter of fact, we expanded a nonprofit version of what we did, that now we do it for other grocery stores and other industries. And over many, many years, our recidivism rate runs about 2%. And so we are very reliably successful with this. And what's also very interesting, a lot of our returning citizens accelerate into management at a much faster rate. And so what we discovered, that this is a very engaged workforce that wants to succeed, that doesn't want to go back to jail, wants to support their family, and they just have a much higher level of ambition and drive to succeed, which makes them really good employees. So this has been incredible. I have to say, when we started at it with the 5, there was a lot of fear. With 500, it's now part of the DNA of the organization. It's a lot easier. So I did have complaints from customers in the beginning. I had complaints from employees. And today, all we have is accolades from everyone for this miracle that's happened. So it's been a great journey.
Thanks very much, Jeff. I also, for the audience, just want to contrast that 2% recidivism rate compares nationally to a 5-year rate somewhere around 60-odd%. So it's truly an incredible achievement and contribution to the communities that your business serves. Let's bring it back to Chicago, home to Chicago. Dorville Carter, President Carter, I often cite the Chicago Transit Authority's Second Chance program as the most exemplary program for a government agency or quasi-government agency in the United States. Could you share a little bit what you are doing at the CTA and how it has, how you think it's important to the Chicagoland community?
Sure, thank you. I'm also very proud of our program and the work that we have done, and it's been almost a lifelong journey for me. This program started back in 2007 with just under 25 participants. Since that time, we've had over 1,400 people go through our program, and CTA itself has permanently hired around 300, almost 400 of those employees directly at CTA. When we set up the program, we were basically trying to address some of the issues that you were discussing earlier. How do you deal with the barriers for returning citizens to move back into society? And we recognized that one of the barriers was that in many cases, these individuals did not have any sort of work experience that they could go to an employer and show that, we can hold on to a job, we can conform with the requirements of a job in terms of showing up on time and doing the work. We wanted to create an opportunity to do that. What I didn't realize at the time was how much of a benefit we were going to get directly from this effort. And I say that not only as an organization or a company, because some of our best employees who've now come out of that program, but also from the opportunity to give back to our community and to show that we are committed to supporting our community in ways other than moving people from point A to point B. When you hear the personal stories of the people who have been through this program and how it has literally change their life and change the lives of their family. You can't help but be touched by what we're doing and ultimately trying to find ways to grow it. We also believe in a very holistic approach to what we do. And so we wrap around services to support these individuals to maximize their ability for success. And I would say that to future employers, that you have to be prepared to support these individuals through this process. And it's not enough just to give them a job and tell them to work. And if you don't put around that bigger holistic network, you will find challenges around what it is that you're trying to do.
You know, that's actually a great segue to our next CEO. I was very fortunate in my research. One of the first CEOs I met was Dan Meyer. Dan joins us from Cincinnati today. And Dan, if you could share a little bit about your wraparound services and the approach you take that you have found is profitable to take to embracing these employees and allowing them to develop careers at your company. Yeah.
Absolutely, Jeff, and thanks for being part of this, and congratulations on your book. Yeah, Nehemiah, we're a profit with a purpose company founded in 2009 to come in the inner city, create light manufacturing jobs for those that need it most. And working with social services, we quickly realized those that needed it most were people with felonies, or maybe coming out of drug and alcohol abuse where they had gaps in their employment. And we found out, Jeff, and Ali, like you did, that most productive, most loyal were those that needed and wanted, and most importantly, deserved a second chance. So we became all in, but early on, we also realized that they would come in for a few days and we'd lose them. And really didn't know where they went. And talking to folks, we were encouraged to hire a social worker. And that was the aha moment for a guy who spent 15 years in corporate, and then I had a previous company. But having a social worker day one, the day one we onboard somebody, we ask two questions. What are your dreams? And what are your barriers for achieving that? And as we all know, when you come out of prison, sustainable employment's the most important thing. But there are so many other things from day one that they need. And over the last 11 years, we've created 8 pillars. We have 3 full-time social workers. And those pillars are basic needs like building community. And we do that from day one because they want to be part of something bigger. Affordable housing is right there. Transportation and legal services. So those are 4 pillars that we support financially, or we leverage our social service partners. And then for people to thrive and achieve that greatness, we have 4 pillars: spiritual wellness, financial wellness, health and wellness, and continued education. So with those 8 pillars, we're able to help people holistically to really achieve that greatness that they have inside.
Then I have, Dan, let me follow up. We have time for more questions for everyone. So let me start, Keith, with you, and then we'll kind of work back through reverse order. Dan, you were recently featured in a case study at Harvard Business School. Can you update us a little bit? I understand there's been some changes on how Harvard is using that study and what that might mean for future leaders, business leaders.
Yeah, and you know, somebody mentioned this, that you know, we really got to get this message across the business community, but we also got to get the future leaders of our country to think this way, because this is really capitalism at its finest. And so I spoke to some senior folks about, you know, what we're doing. And there was the head of the business school, and I challenged that head that we need to get this message out. They did a case study. We were part of the previous 2 years of just being an elective. And this year we're part of their core curriculum that every person that enters Harvard Business School has to be part of this particular class, and the case study in Nehemiah is taught. We're also starting to do that with Georgetown University and looking at other universities to add this to their curriculum, because we need to influence those future leaders of the country.
Thank you. President Carter, I'm going to turn to you. I'm a proud CTA rider with my Venture card with me always. But what advice would you give to other governmental organizations, municipalities. There must be some unique challenges that are faced when you're building a program in these environments. Can you share your advice?
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, don't try to reinvent the wheel. There are successful programs that you mentioned earlier in your remarks that you should go and look at to see what model best fits your organization. I don't think it's all that different than the advice you would give someone in the private sector. I also think that it's really important to establish a pipeline for the applicants to come into your program. And that really requires you to partner up with social service agencies. We work with 27 social service agencies around the city to identify candidates to come into our program and to actually provide that preparatory work to get them ready to take on a program. And then, like I said earlier, once they come into your program, you need to provide support for them during that period. We provide additional training opportunities for them. We provide them with the ability to get a commercial driver's license and other technical skills that they can use for future employment. And we also, work with them to develop, resume skills and the other things they're going to do, interviewing skills, the other things that they're going to need to be successful, whether they stay at CTA or whether they go into other job opportunities elsewhere. And I think all of those play a critical role. The final thing that I would say is that as governmental agencies, we have tremendous influence over the money that we spend and the companies we do business with. And so we use that influence to set up job fairs and to get our contractors who do, who make millions of dollars of profit off of our work to interview these individuals and to offer them opportunities for employment. And we've been very successful in not only getting people placed at CTA, but also getting them placed in other companies that do business with CTA. So you can have an amplifier effect. The work that you do around this as a governmental agency that can be also very important.
Thank you. One of the things that I always recommend is, even if you're not a second chance employer, take any restrictions out of your vendor contract. So that's tremendous that the CTA is spreading the word in that way. I'm going to go to Jeff Brown. Now, Jeff, in the middle of the pandemic, I'm finalizing my manuscript. I call you up and I said, Jeff, now you have a high unemployment rate. You have your pick of workers. Will you continue hiring Second Chance? And if you could share with our audience some of the thoughts you shared with me at that point.
Yeah, it was interesting. A lot of my competitors in Philadelphia that don't hire Second Chance workers, they had trouble staffing their stores during the pandemic. Their employees, they didn't have the same rigor, the same commitment. And my employees, I want to say 98% showed up for work every day, every shift, all through the pandemic. Now, we definitely worked hard to protect them with masks and shields and temperature checks and all those things. But the returning citizens were in this with me during a tough time to a much bigger degree than the general worker population. And so, no, I wouldn't change it. I've continued to push to bigger and bigger numbers. And, a lot of the returning citizens, they advance into management. And if they don't advance into management with me, they end up in management with someone else once they work for me. And so I think this is part of our DNA now. No, I would not change it.
And Jeff, a real quick clarification. I see you hear you say earlier that you're actually training returning citizens for your competitors.
Yeah, somebody came to me and a philanthropic person and said, would you consider doing this? And we have a national nonprofit, Uplift Solutions, and we opened up a workforce division, and Uplift has trained 500 or 600 workers, a lot of which go to my competitors today. And the same sort of outcome has been achieved, where we have about a 2% recidivism, about 98% succeed. There's still some of my competitors that won't take them.
Be on a minute.
But the truth of the matter is that they compete for these workers, and we can't train them quick enough. The demand for them exceeds what we can produce them. And so we've been working to expand our program, and we've been developing curriculum so we could sort of license what we've learned to other to other agencies around the country, because we really think this is a home run.
Right. Thank you, Jeff. That's terrific. Ali Svensson, we're focused here today on second chance, people with criminal records. Are you finding that some of the spirit of innovation or the training of managers that supports that allows you to move into other areas of underdeveloped or untapped talent beyond just people with criminal records?
That has definitely helped us. When we think about the two platforms from which we can make a positive social impact, we feed people and we employ people. And in terms of the employment platform, opportunity employment, whether it is second chance, justice involved, IDD, individuals with developmental disabilities, and opportunity youth generally are kind of the three populations that we've evolved into leaning into heavily. I think we provide opportunities for anybody who's interested and committed to the notion of being of service and somebody who's seeking an opportunity, but we do try to focus and provide, as many have made the point today, that you do need to provide services and supports once you do employ these incredible individuals and set them up for success. So we're trying to streamline and focus on the populations that we can serve. But yes, it has expanded, and that's part of why this approach is so inspiring. It does. I think of an individual that we hired years ago. She now she's a second chance employee, and she's on our recruitment team, and she's out all around the country finding other organizations and hiring more people. She just wants to pay it back, pay it forward, and the ripple effect of this has really been incredible.
Well, thank you so much. And now we're going to ask the CEOs to stay on. We're bringing on our returned citizens to join us for the panel, and we'll have questions for them as well. And then we'll open it up to questions, and that will be for the whole panel. So let me start out with a question for Orlando. I know you're coming on now, and we have everyone on. Let me start out with Orlando. What was your biggest fear or concern about gaining employment after incarceration?
For me, there were both short-term and long-term fears, right? Pre-entry, I think one of the biggest questions I had was, did I have the skills necessary to succeed in the workforce? I was incarcerated at the age of 17, just around the time that the internet, just around the time that technology was really growing. So I had no computer skills. I want to say that my soft skills, my engagement skills were not as fully developed as they are today. And I was in fear of how that would look to an employer when I would enter the workforce. Another question that was in my mind was, would my conviction prevent me from obtaining jobs that I wanted to do, as opposed to jobs that I would just do because they were available? I wanted to make sure that the job that I had was something that I loved to do, so that it wouldn't seem like a job, and that it would be meaningful to me in the capacity that I wanted to. And lastly, I think my fear was, would I have to live in secrecy based on my conviction, right? Would that come up later in my employment history to cause them to fire me if I were to lie about having an X on my background? Long-term, my fear was around sustainability. I did not want to continue being a burden to my family or to those that I loved. They had supported me for the 20 years and up until my incarceration. So my whole life, I did not want to be a burden. And I wanted to have an opportunity to be constantly moving forward, and that upward mobility piece, to be able to have my own home, to be able to provide for others and be a supportive force in the community wherever I would have landed and ended up landing.
Orlando, thank you for sharing your journey. I think that really speaks to a lot of employers who are looking to hire people of character. And, but there's also this stigma, of course, around people with records. So we want to hear from one of our panelists, Alicia. What would you say to employers? What would you like them to know about this population of our citizens?
The most important thing, and I know that you guys have touched on so many of these topics already, but is just to really to eliminate stereotypes about what a person that has criminal legal involvement is, what they're capable of, what kind of skills that they bring to the table. Because, you know, as somebody that was incarcerated really young at 14, and I think 12, I think was the first time that I had interaction with the criminal legal system, the people that I've met through that process of being in different jails and girls' homes and youth prison and foster care have like phenomenal leadership skills, just so much talent, so much passion, so much dedication to their community that they're returning to their families, to their friends. And I think it's just really important to look at a person as a whole person versus look at them as one of their actions potentially. Like, and that's, I think, what the criminal legal system does is it takes a person and it says, you are this one action, therefore you cannot do all these different things. And it's simply just false. It's a false narrative. It's false stereotypes. And I think it's really imperative that, you know, us as a society and as business leaders and it's such an honor to be in here with you and all of the things that you're doing. And this, you know, this is phenomenal, but it's like, we really have to work together and all pull in the same direction and say, like, let's actually remove these stereotypes. Let's stop being afraid of people. Let's stop saying that a person is a sum of one choice.
Thank you for sharing that. And, you know, we've talked now to business owners, prospective employers, but we also have messages for other reentrants. And Adonis, if I could ask you to share the biggest challenges you faced, as well as, so you got a two-part question, the biggest challenges you personally faced and witnessed, as well as advice you would give to other reentrants based on your experience.
So my biggest challenge my biggest challenge that I faced about getting a job after release, it was actually, my role to do that was actually tell them about my background beforehand. I would interview, you know, some jobs do a background check that lasts a little longer than you can get the job itself. And even the program I went through, that was their biggest fear. What would the company say about my background? So after I interviewed and told them beforehand, they would tell me, well, you have the skill set and your conviction was X amount of years ago. So you put it behind you, we'll put it behind us. And it shocked me that there are companies out here that actually gave me that chance, knowing what was on my background and, you know, the stuff I did in the past when I was younger. And for the second part of that question, for any reentrants that's, you know, looking for a job, I would say your best bet would be to never give up, to, you know, be straightforward. You know, you gotta have that confidence. You gotta go in there knowing that this is something that you want to do. Like I tell a bunch of my trainees all the time, I'm like, we're here to get a career. We're trying to change our life. We're not just, you know, trying to look for a job. You know, we're trying to not be that statistic. So, you know, it's like you have to do what you have to do to turn yourself around and be a better person. You know, be what you need to be for that one speck of that cog, you know, in a watch that makes society turn.
You know, I think this is such an important question. I'm going to ask it of the other reentrants on the panelists too. So Alicia, what do you want other reentrants to know? What would you say to them? Hope you're on mute. Let me swing over. I'm going to ask Orlando. We will come back to you, Alicia. Thank you much. Orlando, if we can get you off of mute. And there we go. And I'll ask you advice to other reentrants, and also feel free to share, you know, some of the barriers you might have faced that you'd like to share with the group.
I think the first thing is not to get caught up in doubt. I know earlier there was a question about skills being absent from people that are incarcerated, and yet many of the jobs that I know people have had in there are professional jobs: locksmiths, chefs, cooks, groundskeepers. So you do have skills. Take comfort in having those skills. Professionalize those skills even further by taking advantage of education while you're there, so that you're able to produce something that is of tangible presentation to an employer. And find something you love to do. Like me, I used to love gardening, right? So I got into the vocational program at Danville Correctional Center doing horticulture, right? And in my head, again, the training, hands-on training that I was able to get through education programs gave me a comfort that I think I would have found employment doing something in that work, whether fixing heating and air conditioners or actually doing landscaping. And also, it's never too early to prepare. I learned that very early from other people around me. Develop a plan, develop your first 24 hours, your first day, your first week, your first month out here, and create a plan for yourself so that you're able to address a lot of those needs that arise once you come home. Transportation, how you're gonna get to and from work, studying CTA bus routes, do you have a car? Do you have somebody that'll take you? All these different things that I think will serve a person well coming home and connect with somebody. There are a lot of peer support groups out here, a lot of formerly incarcerated people that you can connect to. And I would hope that the information we're able to provide will help people and support people in that way to know that they're not alone.
Alicia, we'll hope you've got your mic back. I'm checking the screen. And,
sorry.
And no, thank you for being with us. We'll ask you to contribute, and then I think we'll try to go a little early to questions if we can to allow. I'm seeing well over 100 comments in the chat, so I'm hoping that we might be able to get to those a little early and give some time for all those questions. But Alicia, why don't you go ahead and share advice? You gave some great advice to employers. Let's talk about advice to reentrants, and also if you could share a little bit about the some of the experiences you've had and the barriers that you faced.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Orlando really said it best when he was talking about the advice to reentrants and the peer groups that are available. I actually have a community organization also called the Uplift Mr. Brown. So we have to collab somehow, definitely. And it is a peer-to-peer support. So it's people with criminal legal records mentoring other people with criminal legal records based on national best practices. And like Orlando had mentioned, I mean, just getting involved in organizations that have that peer-to-peer support, because you have people that know what you've been through that can just help support your goals in all areas of life. And some of the biggest barriers that I faced a lot of barriers. I mean, I think like everyone that goes through the criminal legal system, I just have to thank the Lord every day I'm alive, really. And I understand why I am, as opposed to some other people. I think those are things that we need to address and talk about too. And we're talking about like equity and these routes that we're creating for people to rise up into leadership positions and what that looks like. But, you know, very young, my juvenile record was expunged and I continuously had to disclose it. So anything that, you know, bans the box where we're not having to talk about this like one event that happened. Because it gets really confusing. It gets, I know early on, you know, trying to obtain employment and just being ambitious and really wanting to like lead, and people are like, no, like, you know, you're going to be lucky if you get a job. And on top of that, when I would try to explain like, hey, I don't know every high school that I've been to because I got put in this juvenile detention and then that youth prison and then here, there was always this assumption that everything that I didn't know was an omission and I was somehow lying. And it's like you're just constantly saddled with this viewpoint of you when you're really just you're like, hey, I'm just like everybody else, right? Like people with criminal legal records are just like everybody else that have just had some different experiences in their life. So those are definitely some of the uphill battles. But, you know, having that peer mentorship and just having the support of the community and, you know, people like all of you has been incredibly rewarding.
You know, I'm just going to follow up on one point you made, Alicia, about the fear or the risk of omitting something unintentional. All too many employers use omission as an excuse to stop the hiring process. And the best practices here, and I'm sure many of the employers we have on would agree, is don't penalize someone for omitting. Don't request self-disclosure. Let the record speak for itself, because there's so much chaos in these young people's lives that is very hard for them to fully know what even might be on their record. So thank you for highlighting that. Let's start to move on to the questions. Give us just a moment to gather those.
Okay. Okay, so we have a question from Michael Thompson. He says, it is very clear that returning citizens may have diverse needs to truly be supported. How can agencies coordinate services to support these individuals while also being able to meet their performance obligations?
So great question. Who on the panel would like to take that?
Jeff, at CTA, we actually set up an advisory group of these agencies to actually work not only to support each other in terms of the pipeline of individuals who are in our program, but also to give us better advice as to what we could do within our own agency to better support these individuals and to better address the concerns and barriers that they may be facing. So, I think that's a good feedback loop to set up. Identifying the social service agencies that ultimately can provide that kind of support or already provide that kind of support, and getting them together with you as a company or an employer to talk through what your program is or is not doing and how to better address it.
I'm going to ask some of the other employers to chip in also. You're talking about for your employees providing a number of services. Do those services get in the way of work time or contributing to your companies?
I don't think so. I think it's important. A lot of returning citizens haven't had legal work and aren't familiar, or they have obstacles. And I think the services are most intense up front, where we have to make sure they have housing, transportation, daycare, these kinds of things, an alarm clock, which is often that, something people overlook, and it results in them showing up late for work. Once you get through that, the next phase of support is, I think management in general and all businesses aren't quite as good of listeners as they should be. And that's to all employees. And what happens with a returning citizen, sometimes they have regular employee problems, like they just don't like the job they got. They like the company, they want to be here, but I can remember we had a very tall returning citizen who had hurt his back to ring the register. And he said he would be thrilled if he could collect cards. In our mind, that was a lesser job, and we would never think to do that, but that's what he wanted to do. And when we moved him there, he was very happy and successful. And so having an outside agency, and we use Uplift, our nonprofit, to check in with the employees and with the employers and see how it's going and troubleshoot problems really has been very helpful.
I think there is this implicit, question here of how can this work business-wise. Providing all these services seems to translate into loyalty in some way and measurable. Dan, I know you've measured some of those expenses and cost savings. Could you just share that, and then we'll go on to the next audience question.
First of all, I want to make a couple comments. One is, we don't use the word employees, we use family members. If you really think about that, that's understanding that individual beyond us working 8 hours a day. So it's very important, if you want to remove these barriers, is understanding where they are in the journey of life. What are all the things they have to deal with? Because it could be a single mom with 4 kids, and there's a lot of scenarios that you need to understand so you can remove that. As far as what we do and why we do it in the programs, if they're family members and you're trying to remove these, we do it on our time. The continued education piece, which is so important to us, that's done on Nehemiah time, because they don't have time when they leave this place. And I'm trying to get back to the question you asked, Jeff, because I'm thinking I'm turning sideways, but go ahead. I don't know
Yeah, no, so the core was, let's talk about, let's give businesses a measurable result in terms of, say,
okay, yeah. Here's the deal. Because we invest heavily in the people, we invest in our community partners with us, and people say, how can you afford this? So it's a very simple equation, and it's all about the whole business side of this. One, we have extremely low turnover, right? When you have low turnover, and ours is less than 15%, industry that could be 50 to 100. It costs us $3,500 to onboard somebody. So let's say you have 100% turnover, we got 100 people, you're spending $350,000 training and developing people. That is a big number. We don't look at it that way, but when you do run the math, all the things that we do to spend to help our people support the community can easily be traced back to having higher productive, loyal workers. So it's really a break even when we looked at it.
You know, I do want to ask the re-entrant, one of the re-entrants about this real quickly. Did any of you ever feel like going for these services made you a worse employee, or did they make you a better employee?
Providing these services make you a better or worse?
Yeah, I'll pick on Orlando. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think anything that adds to who you are as a person is always going to be a plus. I mean, developing some of those skills prior to going into the workforce is to me something that I want to believe everybody wants to do, because you never know what knowledge you acquire is going to be applicable to your daily life. So anything that adds to you that'll make you a potential better candidate for a particular position, I think it's always a plus. That's why I did a lot of the life skill stuff, a lot of the soft skills building stuff, and engaging in programs like that prior to coming home. And once I came home, luckily, it was more so the social capital I had built up prior to release that really supported me in doing what I do today.
Thank you. Let's go to the next audience question.
So we have a couple of other questions. Let's go with this one. This is directed at our panelists, and Orlando has decided he's going to take this one. The question is from Tom Decker. He says, question for the panelists. What is the one critical thing you have not been able to mention that we all need to know about the value proposition hiring returning citizens? I'd love to hear from Orlando, or actually anyone on our panel.
I think it's basic decency and belief in humanity, right? Like, a conviction does not remove that from us. We're human beings, we're people like anybody else. We just may have caused harm, and we pay the consequence for that harm, right? And given the opportunity, I think people will always do the best with that opportunity, right with that opportunity. And just advice, and I put it in the chat, like, a lot of this stuff can be addressed before a person comes home. There was a comment made by, I believe, Michael Cannon in the chat box about connecting with people before they come home. What is the level of communication between potential employers in your positions with colleges and universities that can deliver the education piece, that can build up people prior to them coming home? And what is the level of engagement that can fill in the gaps, that can be part of the continuity of care for people that are going to be joining or potentially joining your workforce, so that when they come home, they already have the assurance that this is where I need to go. It's close to where I'm at. If there are transportation issues, you already know that because there's been an assessment made. And I think there are steps that are being taken to address those needs. But try to connect with people and develop lines of communication with other institutions that can support your companies and your businesses and your organizations.
You know, I happen to know the person who asked the question, Tom Decker. I happen to know he's a second chance employer, and I happen to know he has some job openings as well. So,
so we have another question. I think this is going to probably need to be our last. We actually want to re-show the video as we close out, just for those who might have had audio challenges hearing it. So now this question comes from Danita Sims. And the question is, how can a startup nonprofit focused on workforce support these partners serving our second chance citizens?
Oh, I think I addressed it in some of my previous comments, because we were a startup nonprofit operation at one time at Uplift, and I think we had a social worker, or we have a social workers that support our trainees to work their way through all their challenges and make sure they're ready to work, and we stay with them. We check in with them and see how they're doing and try to troubleshoot problems they come up with. I don't think that's a great cost, but like I said before, sometimes employers don't do that like they should. And having an outside nonprofit, make sure that everything's going well or try to work through any issues is really very helpful.
We have the video queued up.
So yes, but I'm going to just take one more. This is from Linda Larson. She says, how can this work for small businesses, maybe 10 to 20 employees with limited resources for offering support services? And I'm going to hop in here and answer it and see if I get agreement from our panelists. Linda, I think in your situation, you would partner with a local workforce development organization or a local workforce board such as ours, so that you can have the support that you need from the workforce development side of the house, while you're providing the actual experience, the employment experience. And they can support you and teach you what you need to know in order to be of more support to that employee.
Yeah, Karen, I would agree with that, and would indicate that that's exactly what we use the social service agencies for. CTA does not itself provide all of the wraparound services. We provide some, but the social service agencies are the ones who really do stay connected with the returning citizen and provide support for that citizen, along with the internal resources that we add to that. And I think it's a very powerful way to address the challenges that a lot of returning citizens face when they come back into the workforce.
I will say thank you to our panelists. This was an extraordinary opportunity. We are very grateful that you shared your time and your insight with us today. And now we'll tee it up for the video. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, for your just gracious partnership. Thank you for your book. I want to make sure that you know, for the first 100 of you who registered, you will be receiving your book. We'll be following up with you for the proper mailing address. We'll get that off soon. I also just want to make sure that for those of you who are not in the Chicago and Cook County region, you do have a local workforce development board, and you have a system of local workforce organizations in your area. If you can't find them, reach out to us. We will help you connect to the local resources in your area. I want to thank all of our amazing panelists. Thank you for sharing your stories of triumph. Thank you for your collegiality, for your collaboration. Thank you for making an investment in this population and recognizing the humanity in all of us. I also want to just lift up the fact that I recognize the times that we're in. The verdict that came in yesterday, we can all breathe a sigh of relief at seeing some measure of justice. But I also recognize, and have reflected on this myself, that one day that officer will get out of prison. And if we believe in redemption for one, we have to believe in redemption for all. And I think about the fact that this work is rooted in the notion that we are more than whatever our worst crime or our worst act was, and that there is an opportunity for us to contribute to society, to have meaningful employment, to support our families, and to be a part of our local economy. So I thank you all for participating with us here today. Again, a huge thank you to all of our panelists and also to our host, David Snyder. We apologize for some of the sound and audio challenges. We are at the famous Union Club, University Club of Chicago. And so, you know, sometimes we have to roll with the punches. But I thank you for hanging in with us. Thank you for being a part of this event today and sharing in this journey. For more information, you can go to shycookworks.org/hire calling, HIRE calling. We are happy to answer any questions and connect you to local or national resources. And with that, we'd love to once again share the video, A Road